The courtroom in the state of Illinois gleamed coldly under the ceiling lights. As the gavel struck, the air grew so tense that everyone could hear their own breathing. Olivia sat at the plaintiff's table, her posture straight, her lips red, her eyes sharp and cold. She glanced at David, the thin man struggling to keep his balance on wooden crutches. He said nothing, his head lowered, his hand clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The large doors suddenly swung open. The sound of footsteps echoed, slow and steady. Every gaze turned toward the newcomer, a gray-haired woman, neatly tied bun, calm face, carrying an old, worn leather briefcase. Judge Henry Cole, known for his stern composure, froze for a moment. He squinted, disbelief flickering in his eyes. Emma Rodriguez. Good heavens, why are you here? The courtroom fell silent. Olivia and her family exchanged confused glances. No one could understand why the appearance of an elderly mother could shake such a famously composed judge. Emma stood still for a few seconds, her gaze sweeping across the room. In that silence, her presence was both calm and heavy, with the weight of years that had passed. If you're hearing me tell this story, the narrator's voice softened, leave me a small sign, a like or a comment. I want to know who this journey is reaching. Because sometimes, stories like this don't belong to just me. They belong to all of us. Emma walked toward the defense table. She set down the leather briefcase. The soft thud echoed through the room. David lifted his head, his eyes trembling as he met his mother's. She placed a hand gently on his shoulder and said softly, "Lift your head, my son. The truth never needs to bow." Her voice was low, deliberate, but unwavering. The entire courtroom seemed to hang on every word. Emma turned to face the judge, then shifted her gaze toward Olivia. Finally, she spoke quietly, almost to herself. Before standing here today, I lost everything. My honor, my faith, and the peace of my years. But there's one thing I never lost: the belief that justice still exists. The sound faded. The narrator's voice grew warm and steady, leading the audience backward in time to where it all truly began. As Emma sat in that courtroom, everything around her seemed to blur. Before her eyes, the memories of past years returned so vividly that her heart ached. Back then, she was only 32. Life had seemed peaceful until the night Richard, her husband, placed his wedding ring on the table. His voice was cold as a winter wind. "I have another life now. I'm sorry, but you'll have to take care of yourself and our son." Without another word, he walked out the door and into the shining car waiting in the driveway. Emma stood frozen, unable to even cry. She turned to her 8-year-old son, David, who stood by the doorway, eyes wide with fear. From that night on, their lives changed completely. In the mornings, Emma worked as a bookkeeping assistant for a small company. In the evenings, she tutored neighborhood children in math. During the snowy winters, her hands cracked from the cold, but she never stopped working. On nights when the power went out, mother and son would share dinner by candlelight, laughing as though that slight glow was an entire sky of stars. As David grew older, he became more understanding. He studied hard, always trying to ease his mother's burden. At 18, he was accepted into a civil engineering program. Emma held him in tears, whispering through her sobs, "I don't need anything else, my son, just for you to live an honest life." In the years that followed, David studied and worked tirelessly, saving every dollar. When he graduated, he handed his mother a stack of papers and a small keychain. "Mom, this is our home. I designed it and built it myself. No one can ever drive us out again." Emma froze. She took the keys, her hand trembling. Her son's hair had darkened from the sun, his face thin from endless night shifts, but in his eyes, she saw her whole world. That afternoon, they stood together in front of their new house. The late sunlight washed the honey-colored bricks in a soft, warm glow. Emma placed a hand on her son's shoulder and said quietly, Now no one can drive us away again." David smiled, a bright, boyish smile that reminded her of years long past. She gazed at the house, her heart full of quiet joy, not because of the red roof or the white door, but because it was built from love and resilience. The gentle sound of the narrator's voice returned as the golden image faded. "I once thought our lives would finally be peaceful, but I was wrong. The real storms began after that." In the early years after their marriage, David and Olivia lived fairly happily. She was youthful, lively, always laughing and talking. Emma used to think her son was lucky to have a wife who cared. Every weekend, Olivia would often help in the kitchen, asking about the old days. The house was always filled with chatter and laughter. But life has unexpected turning points. That day was a morning in October. The air was still misty. Emma was making coffee when the phone rang. On the other end was the trembling voice of a stranger. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm sorry. David had an accident at the construction site. He's at St. Mary's Hospital." The cup in Emma's hand fell to the floor and shattered. She doesn't remember how she ran out of the house. She only knows that when she arrived, the sirens and the smell of antiseptic made her chest tighten. David lay on the hospital bed, his leg wrapped in white bandages, his face pale. The doctor said he had fallen from a high scaffold. His leg bones were shattered, and the chance of full recovery was almost zero. Emma sat by her son all night, holding his cold hand tightly. When David woke, the first thing he asked was, "Olivia, where is she, Mom?" Before she could answer, the door burst open. Olivia came in, tears falling, murmuring, "I'm here, honey. Don't worry, we'll get through this." At that moment, those words sounded sincere. Even Emma believed them. In the first weeks, Olivia took care of him diligently, cooking porridge, bringing medicine, and helping him practice walking. But as time passed, her patience gradually vanished. Whenever David dropped something, Olivia would sigh, then mutter just loud enough for Emma to hear, "If he stays like this forever, how are we supposed to live?" Sometimes, when David tried to take a few steps on his crutches, she would only glance at him, no longer clapping or encouraging like before. 3 months later, when David returned home, Olivia had undergone a complete transformation. She began going out frequently, using excuses like work overtime or meeting friends. Left in the house were only Emma, David, and an oppressive silence. One evening, while Emma was folding blankets, she heard the door open. Olivia came in wearing a strong perfume, a short dress, and high heels. Emma asked gently, "You're home late. Are you okay?" Olivia replied curtly, "Don't pry, Mom. I have my own things to do." From that day, the way she looked at David was no longer pity, but contempt. Their neighbor, Mrs. Turner, stopped by one day and whispered, "Emma, I don't want to meddle in other people's affairs. But lately I've seen Olivia meeting someone at the cafe down the block. They look very close." Emma only nodded slightly, trying to keep calm. She didn't tell David because she knew his heart was more fragile than his legs. In the days that followed, she began paying closer attention. Once, while cleaning the living room, she saw Olivia smiling as she spoke on the phone, a smile Emma hadn't seen in a long time. Her voice was low but clear. "When the house is divided, we'll sell that half. I'll take care of the rest." The words landed like a cold knife in Emma's chest. Emma stood motionless behind the door, her heart pounding, her hand clutching the cloth she was holding. She wanted to rush in and confront her, but then stopped. Not now, not the time to strike back. If Olivia dared to scheme like that, surely she was hiding even more. That night, Emma brought dinner to her son. David still sat in the chair by the window, his gaze distant. He asked in a voice as soft as the breeze, "Mom, Olivia seems tired. Am I a burden?" Emma set the bowl on the table, forcing her voice to stay calm. "No, my son. Life is just changing too fast. Rest a bit, and things will be all right." As she walked out of the room, tears welled up. She knew things will be all right. was the first lie she had ever told herself, but it was the only lie she needed to keep her son's heart at ease, at least for a bit longer. Emma sat quietly by the window all night. Outside, streetlights dimmed and rain drizzled. She looked at the house her son had built with sweat and tears, now slowly taking on a hue of sorrow. Inside her, a small flame had been kindled, quiet but persistent. She knew the time would come when she would have to stand up for justice, for her son, and for this home. 1 week later, the atmosphere in the house was stretched to its limit. Early that morning, an expensive car pulled up to the gate. Olivia entered wearing a new dress and sparkling high heels, accompanied by a woman in a suit, her lawyer. The lawyer placed a stack of papers on the table with a professional expression, voice steady, as though presenting a long-prepared contract. "This is the divorce petition," she said plainly. "Ms. Olivia requests division of assets and seeks custody of daughter Sophie. We want to resolve this quickly, without prolonging it." David stared at the papers like a sleepwalker. His hand trembled slightly, but his voice remained small. "Olivia, don't do this." Olivia looked up, her eyes devoid of emotion. "You can't do anything for this family now. We need to think about the future." She stressed the word future as if it justified all her actions. Emma took off her reading glasses and looked directly at the lawyer. She did not shout or plead. She spoke slowly, clearly, each word measured. "This house was purchased with my son's money before they were married. Under the law, it is separate property. You have no right to demand it be divided." Olivia's lawyer raised an eyebrow, opened her file, and said in a legal tone, "In many cases, even property acquired before marriage can be reconsidered if there was long cohabitation and joint investment. We have grounds to request an equal split." Emma listened and calmly replied, "The law is the law. If you have evidence that the house became marital property, present it to the court. Mere words are not enough." Her voice was firm, not flaunting knowledge, but sufficient to bring silence to the living room. The argument lasted the whole morning. Olivia and her lawyer left, leaving a paper and a request for a signature. David looked at his mother with pleading eyes. Emma put the pen down but did not sign. She knew one signature now could cost them the whole house. That night, when the house was quiet, Emma heard soft footsteps. Through the crack of the door, she recognized Olivia whispering in Sophie's room. She froze, stepped closer to the door, and stopped, her heart aching but her ears refusing to miss a word. Olivia's voice was colder than any lash. "Sophie, listen to me. Tomorrow in court, if anyone asks, you must say you don't want to live with Daddy because he's too weak and can't take care of you. Understand?" There was a small sob from her granddaughter. I don't want to lie, Mommy." Olivia raised her voice, a little threatening. "If you don't listen, I won't give you the things you like anymore. Do you want to live in a nice apartment, have friends? You need to help Mommy, okay?" Emma felt as if someone was squeezing her heart. Her vision blurred and tears streamed down. She could no longer hold them back. She stood there for a long time, knowing she had just witnessed the worst thing, a child being forced to betray her father for material gain. She could have burst in, shouted, forced Olivia to be quiet, and pulled Sophie away. But she stopped. David was still weak, and chaos could hurt him further. Besides, she needed evidence. What she had just heard had to be proven if she wanted to win in court. Emma stepped back, her hand trembling as it touched the doorknob. Tears still fell. Her pain twisted, but her resolve rose, cold and clear. She thought of sleepless nights, of choosing to feed her son before herself, of biting her lip to keep from crying. She thought of the house they had built with sweat and her son's promise. No one can drive us away anymore. In that moment, everything became clearer than ever. If these people dared to use the child as a tool, if they dared to fabricate lies in court to seize the house and her son's future, then she could not remain silent. Emma put her hand on the door, gripping it tight. She did not want to act out of anger, but she wanted a plan. She whispered to herself, "If they dare lie to the law, I will teach them what true justice is." That night, instead of sleeping, Emma made a plan. She would not confront them with rage, but with evidence. She would return to the path she had left many years before, the path of law and truth. The next morning, Emma sat by the window, watching sunlight fall on the house that had once been warm, now heavy with silence. On the table, the divorce petition Olivia had left still lay there, neat and flat like a challenge. She picked up the paper, read through each line, then folded it and put it into her briefcase. It was time to act. She put on her coat, wrapped a scarf, and left the house for the crisp air of Chicago. The familiar route took her to a place she had long abandoned, the office of Frank Delgado, an old friend and the private detective she had worked with on many cases before she retired. Frank's office was located in an old neighborhood of red brick buildings. The sign, Delgado Investigations, had faded with the years, but inside everything was still tidy. When the door opened, Frank looked up from a stack of files. His eyes widened in surprise. Then he laughed. "Good heavens, Emma Rodriguez. I thought you'd left this world behind." Emma smiled faintly. "So did I, until they touched my family." Frank rose and poured 2 cups of coffee. He knew she hadn't come for small talk. Emma recounted everything. The accident, Olivia's change, the lies told to little Sophie, and the plan to divide the house. Frank listened quietly. His expression grew grave. "What do you need from me, Emma?" he asked. "The truth," she answered simply. "I need to know what she's doing and with whom." Frank nodded. "I'll investigate. But these things aren't easy, especially if the other side has backing." Emma looked, him straight in the eye, calm but resolute. "I don't need easy. I just need accurate." 2 weeks later, Emma's landline rang. Frank's voice on the other end was unusually low. "I've got what you need. Meet me at the Lakeview Corner Cafe at 8 tomorrow morning." The next day, it drizzled. Emma arrived at the cafe and saw Frank sitting in a shadowed corner with a thick brown envelope in front of him. He said nothing, only pushed the envelope toward her. Inside were a series of photographs and bank statements. In the photos, Olivia was holding hands with a middle-aged man, confident bearing, dressed in an expensive suit. His face was familiar enough to make Emma recognize him instantly. William Cross, a well-known real estate businessman. Frank spoke softly but firmly. "William has a bad reputation. He's been involved in multiple disputes over women's assets after divorce. Transfers between him and Olivia began 3 months ago. Here are the bank records, 30,000, then several other amounts after that. I also have photos of them entering the Westmont Hotel together last week." Emma was silent for a long moment. Her hand brushed the photos, but her gaze was cold, no longer trembling. "I see," she said slowly. "She didn't just betray my son. She's trying to leave him with nothing." Frank leaned back. "What will you do next, Emma?" "I'll do what I used to do best." "You mean, I'll go to court?" That night, Emma sat in her small study. On the desk lay the new file, the evidence Frank had just handed over. She arranged each paper, checked every detail, like a soldier cleaning weapons before battle. Outside, the rain fell lightly. The desk lamp's yellow light revealed the lines on her face, but also a remarkable hardness. On the old bookshelf sat a framed photo of her at the oath-taking ceremony from her days as a lawyer. Emma looked at the picture and smiled slightly. Maybe it's time the steel lawyer made a comeback. She opened the drawer and took out her old yellowed bar card. Her fingers stroked the engraved name. In her eyes, there was no longer just the fear or fatigue of a single mother. There was the look of a woman who had believed in justice and never let it die. Emma put the documents into her briefcase and stood. Her voice, low but determined, narrated, "I left the courtroom years ago to find peace. But if they dare turn the law into a tool of lies, I will remind them, Justice still has people who will fight for it. She turned off the light and stepped out of the room. Only the soft sound of the wind through the window remained. A new chapter in Emma's fight had begun. On the morning of the first hearing, Chicago's sky was a solid gray. Emma helped David up the courthouse steps, moving slowly. The familiar red brick building suddenly seemed larger, heavier, as if testing their resolve. Across the street, a luxury car pulled up. Olivia stepped out in a teal dress and bright red lipstick, accompanied by her private attorney, Catherine Miles, a famously tough and pricey lawyer. Olivia smiled, her eyes cold as they swept over David, leaning on his crutch. Then she turned to her lawyer. "I'm not worried. This one is ours to win." Inside the courtroom, the air was metallic and cold. David sat quietly in the defendant's row, hands clasped. Olivia sat opposite with a confident expression, her eyes lifting slightly whenever her lawyer spoke. When the hearing began, Catherine rose, her voice crisp and arrogant. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Olivia Rodriguez, has endured a miserable life with a husband who can no longer work. We request a divorce, an equal division of assets, and custody of their daughter so the child may live in a better environment." David bowed his head. Each of her words felt like a knife cutting him. Catherine continued, merciless. "Mr. David Rodriguez is unemployed, incapable of caring for his child, and entirely dependent on his mother. This marriage has lost its meaning." Olivia offered a thin smile. "I just want to live my life as I deserve." Emma gripped her hands but remained silent. Judge Cole nodded and signaled for the defense to speak. David's court-appointed young lawyer stood awkwardly and offered a few weak words. Before he could lay out arguments, Catherine interrupted him repeatedly. David sat there, disappointed, his eyes vacant. On the plaintiff's side, Olivia leaned in, whispering to her attorney with a mocking smirk. No one noticed Emma observing every gesture and look. Then Catherine pressed the attack. "I want to ask the defendant directly. Do you believe that a man in your condition can care for an 8-year-old daughter, or will you leave it to your mother?" David opened his mouth, but he couldn't answer. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Emma saw her son lower his head, his shoulders trembling. She understood that if she did nothing, they would crush him with words and prejudice. She stood up. At first, no one paid attention. An older woman with gray hair quietly walked forward. But when she placed her worn leather briefcase on the defense table, the soft thunk silenced the room. Emma lifted her head, her voice clear and strong. "From this moment, I am the legal representative for the defendant, Mr. David Rodriguez." The sound reverberated through the room. Catherine turned, eyebrows raised in disbelief. Olivia froze, mouth open but speechless. Judge Cole, who had been stern all morning, paused. He looked closely at the woman standing before him and exclaimed, "Emma Rodriguez, you used to be Chicago's steel lawyer." A ripple of astonishment swept the courtroom. Spectators whispered. A few reporters turned, scribbling notes. Emma inclined her head slightly, her tone calm. "Your Honor, I left this work seeking peace, but today I return, not to prove anything, but to defend the truth." Catherine tried to regain composure and sneered. "So this is a civic lawyer, is it? Someone who left the profession decades ago? Are you going to teach me law with memories?" Emma did not respond. She opened her briefcase and laid neatly organized documents on the table. "I don't need to teach anyone. I only remind everyone that justice never grows old." David looked at his mother, his eyes moist. For the first time since leaving the hospital, he felt hope return. Judge Cole adjusted his glasses and nodded. "Ms. Rodriguez is permitted to represent. The court so notes." The atmosphere in the room seemed to change color. Olivia sat stiffly, fingers clutching the hem of her dress. Catherine, though forcing calm, showed the first cracks of uncertainty. Emma turned to her son and said softly, "Trust me. We are not here to beg for pity. We are here to reclaim the truth. As she took her seat, the courtroom remained silent. Light streamed through the window, illuminating her face, composed, yet with eyes burning sharp as they had been in the days when everyone remembered her title, Chicago's steel lawyer. A past thought to be asleep had awakened, and this time it would fight for her family. The air in the courtroom that day was thick. Everyone still seemed stunned by the return of the city's once famous steel lawyer, but Emma paid no mind to the crowd's stares. She opened her old leather briefcase, her hands steady, her voice even and firm like the judge's gavel. "Your Honor, I will present the defense's rebuttal, and I bring evidence, not to attack anyone, but to establish the truth." Judge Cole nodded. "You may proceed." Emma drew out the first file and set it gently on the table. Exhibit 1. The title deed for the house. The entire purchase was completed 2 years before the marriage between David and Olivia. This house is in my son's name alone, in accordance with Illinois state law. Catherine, Olivia's attorney, raised an eyebrow. "Can you prove that?" Emma replied immediately, "I have the original from the county recorder's office and confirmation from the bank. The court may examine them." The court clerk accepted the documents and passed them to the judge. After a moment, he nodded, his tone grave. "The documents are valid. The house is the separate property of Mr. David Rodriguez." Murmurs rippled through the room. Olivia went rigid. Her confident smile vanished. But Emma did not stop. She produced a small silver USB drive. "Exhibit 2, she said, is an audio recording made in this very house the night before the divorce petition was filed. In it, the plaintiff, Ms. Olivia, coerces her daughter, little Sophie, to lie in court." All eyes turned to her. Emma handed the USB to the clerk. The monitor was turned on. Olivia's voice came through clearly. "Sophie, you have to say you don't want to live with Daddy. You have to say Daddy is weak and can't take care of you, understand?" Then came the little girl's sob. "I don't want to lie. I love Daddy and Grandma." Olivia's voice again, cold and hard. "If you don't, do it. I won't let you see your friends anymore." The courtroom froze. Many spectators bowed their heads. A few sighed. David lowered his face, his hand trembling. Emma looked at her son, her expression softening, but her voice remained steady as she continued. "I will make no comment. The truth speaks for itself." Judge Cole signaled to stop the playback. He looked toward Olivia, stern. "Ms. Torres, do you have anything to say in your defense?" Olivia sprang to her feet, her face ashen. "This is all fabricated. She set me up." Emma did not answer. She opened the third file. "And here," she said slowly, "is the final exhibit. The financial records between Ms. Olivia and businessman William Cross." She laid out the photos and the printed transfer records. The images of Olivia holding hands with William at the Westmont Hotel appeared on the screen. Gasps filled the room. Catherine struggled to stay composed, but her voice trembled. "Objection! These are private photographs." "No," Emma interrupted. "This is lawful evidence, provided by a private investigator and verified by the bank. I am not interested in prying into private life. I only prove that this marriage was betrayed." Judge Cole asked the clerk to verify, then nodded in agreement. "The evidence is admitted." The courtroom erupted. A few people softly applauded Emma's sharpness. Olivia turned pale, her eyes bloodshot. Just then, the judge called out, "The court requests that little Sophie Rodriguez be brought to testify." The rear door opened. Sophie entered. A small girl, hair neatly tied, eyes still wet. Emma rose and took her granddaughter's hand. "It's okay, dear. Just tell the truth." The girl nodded slightly, then turned to face the judge. Her voice trembled but was clear. I love Daddy and Grandma. I don't want to lie. I want to stay with them." Silence fell. David collapsed, hands over his face, tears falling. Several people in the gallery began to cry. The judge nodded slowly, and Emma simply placed a hand on Sophie's shoulder and smiled faintly. At that moment, Olivia leapt up, screaming harshly, "Don't believe her! She's a failure! She was disbarred for dishonesty!" Her shout rang through the room. Catherine hurried to pull her client back into her seat, but it was too late. Emma remained standing, her eyes unflinching. She spoke slowly, each word clear in the hush. "I was never disbarred. I chose to leave when justice was being smeared, and today I return to prove that the truth still has a voice." The courtroom was silent, every gaze fixed on the silver-haired woman standing at the center of the room, a mother, a lawyer, and a symbol of resilience. The battle was not over, but from that moment, everyone understood. The scales of justice had begun to tilt toward Emma. After Olivia's shrill outburst, the courtroom seemed frozen. All eyes turned to Emma. Some spectators whispered, curious. David, still seated in the defendant's row, looked only at his mother, without a shadow of doubt. He knew she needed no defense, but Emma understood that there are truths which, if left unsaid, can be twisted forever. She inhaled deeply and stepped up to the podium in the center of the room. Her voice was calm and measured, but it carried throughout the space. "I was never disbarred. 18 years ago, I left the court for one reason. I refused to be silent in the face of corruption." A murmur rose and quickly fell as Emma continued. "That case was one of the biggest I ever handled. My client was a woman abandoned by her husband, a husband who had close ties to a senior judge." Her gaze fixed on a distant point, as if the old image had returned. "I uncovered collusion, records altered, evidence hidden. I went public, but instead of protection, I was isolated, smeared, and threatened. The night before the trial, I received a call from that very judge." She paused. The room held its breath. "He told me that if I did not withdraw, my career would be over. I answered that justice is not a commodity to be bought and sold." Emma smiled softly, not with triumph, but in recollection. "And I kept my word. I left the profession rather than stand in a system that treated justice as a bargaining chip. I left Chicago with my young son and vowed never to set foot in a courtroom again." Her voice faltered, then grew strong. "But life has a way of bringing us back to what we tried to escape. Today I do not stand here to excuse myself. I only want to show that however long it is buried, the truth will eventually claw its way into the light." She bowed her head slightly and returned to her seat. The courtroom remained silent. Only the clerk's pen scratched as he recorded her words. Judge Cole looked at Emma for a long time. He took off his glasses and set them on the bench, his tone warm. "What you have just said, I can confirm." Everyone started. "I was one of the court clerks at that time," he continued. "The judge she mentioned was later investigated for taking bribes. Internal records confirmed every accusation she made." A wave of astonishment swept the room. Catherine, Olivia's lawyer, lowered her eyes. Olivia sat stunned. The judge looked at Emma with evident respect. "Ms. Rodriguez, if anyone has doubted your honor, today I, on behalf of the court, restore it. You are not only a courageous mother. You are a symbol for those who stood up for what is right, even at great cost." David bowed his head, tears he could not hold back. Little Sophie sat beside him, clutching Emma's hand, whispering, "I know Grandma never did anything wrong." Emma turned and smiled at her granddaughter. Her narrative voice rose over the courtroom's soft background. "People can take away your reputation, your job, or the years of your youth, but there is one thing they can never take: the truth." Light from the window slanted down across the defense table where Emma stood. Small in stature, but steadfast. The courtroom watched as if witnessing something rare, justice cleansed by the words of someone who had been buried beneath it. Judge Cole nodded, his voice low and almost moved. "The court will recess for 15 minutes. When we return, we will hear the verdict." The gavel fell with a decisive thud. No one rose immediately. All eyes continued to follow the silver-haired woman as she slowly packed her files, her hands trembling slightly, but her gaze bright and clear as it had never been dulled over the years. That day, she had left the court because she had lost faith in the system. Today, she returned and brought that faith back to life, in the very place where it had once been crushed. The morning of the verdict, Chicago was obvious. Sunlight streamed through the courthouse windows, falling on the old walls stained by time. The courtroom was packed. Everyone held their breath. There were no more whispers or curious glances like before, only a heavy waiting, as if all were standing before a fateful moment. Emma sat beside David and little Sophie. She gripped both their hands, feeling the warmth of the small hand and the frail hand of her son. Her gaze was peaceful, but deep within, it was a long swell. All the years of hurt, humiliation, and struggle gathered into this instant. The rear door opened. Judge Henry Cole entered, his black robe stirring slightly in the ceiling fan's breeze. He took his seat, adjusted his glasses, and looked across the room. After reviewing all the evidence, testimony, and records, the court issues its final ruling. No one breathed. Olivia clenched the edge of the table, her fingernails pressing into the wood. Catherine, her attorney, lowered her eyes, knowing that what was coming could not be changed. The judge read slowly, each word set into the air. 1. The petition for divorce between Ms. Olivia Torres and Mr. David Rodriguez is granted. Olivia closed her eyes and tried to remain calm. 2. The house in the North Park suburb, proven to be the separate property of Mr. David Rodriguez, belongs solely to him. A murmur swept the room. David bowed his head. Tears fell, but he squeezed his mother's hand and said nothing. 3. Custody and care of little Sophie Rodriguez are awarded to Mr. David Rodriguez and Ms. Emma Rodriguez. The mother, Ms. Olivia Torres, shall have no financial rights and shall have visitation only under the court's supervised schedule. The room erupted. Many rose to their feet, applause mixed with emotional sobs. David hugged Sophie. The girl burst into tears, calling, "Daddy, Grandma!" Emma wrapped both of them in her arms. Her tears ran down her cheeks, but they were tears of relief, pure and light. Olivia's face went pale. She sprang up, shouting bitterly, "No, this can't be. I will appeal. I will take everything back." Judge Cole replied calmly, "You have the right to appeal, but justice has spoken. Court adjourned." The gavel struck 3 times, decisive, irreversible. Olivia froze. She looked around for Catherine's eye, but the lawyer quietly packed files, avoiding that gaze. Olivia turned and hurried out of the courtroom, her steps unsteady as if the ground beneath her had collapsed. A week later, word spread through the neighborhood. William Cross, Olivia's lover, had cut all ties. He sold the apartment she once lived in, blocked all contact, and disappeared from her life. People said Olivia had to move into a shabby rented room in the south suburbs, living quietly and avoiding attention. No more designer dresses, no more parties, only silence and the bitterness of someone who lost everything to greed and deceit. At the small house in North Park, the afternoon light through the windows felt warmer than ever. David sat on the wooden bench on the porch, Sophie leaning on his shoulder with a storybook in hand. Emma sat opposite, quietly watching the 2 people she loved most, her heart full of gratitude. "I told you, Mom," David said, voice thick. "Now nobody can drive us out anymore." Emma nodded. Her hand trembled slightly, but her smile shone. "No one, my son, because we kept the most precious thing, the truth." The wind rustled the orange trees in the yard, carrying a faint fragrance into the house. The walls that had witnessed so many tears now echoed with laughter. Sophie ran out and hugged her father and grandmother, her innocent voice calling, "Grandma, I'll study really hard so I can protect everyone, like you did for Dad." Emma held her granddaughter tightly, her eyes wet but her smile bright. After years of fighting, she understood. Victory was not only the verdict, but seeing justice return to those who deserved it. On the table, the courthouse's letter of thanks still lay, with Judge Cole's handwritten line, "Thank you for reminding us that justice never grows old." Emma looked out at the garden where dusk was falling. For the first time in many years, she felt a deep sense of peace. Justice had returned, not only in the courtroom, but in this home she had defended with all her heart. 3 months after the verdict, the little house in North Park rang with laughter again. On afternoons, the breeze through the orange trees brought a light, sweet scent. Life had slowly returned to a peaceful rhythm. David could now leave his crutches behind, walking slowly but steadily. He took a home course in technical design. His drawings reappeared on the table, neat, orderly, full of hope. Each time Emma watched her son practice walking, she couldn't help but smile. The mother who had endured a battle now needed only to see her son stand firm. Sophie ran around the house, her long black hair flying. She laughed constantly, as if every shadow that once hovered had vanished. Sometimes she sat beside Emma and told school stories, her eyes bright. One afternoon, as golden light filled the living room, Sophie clumsily put on Emma's old high heels. She wobbled, hands on her hips, imitating the way Emma had walked into the courtroom that day. "Grandma, when I grow up, I'll be a lawyer like you," Sophie said proudly. "I'll defend justice and won't let anyone be treated unfairly." Emma laughed, eyes misting. She bent down and smoothed her granddaughter's hair. "Then I have someone to carry on. But remember, being a lawyer isn't about winning or losing. It's about protecting what is right." David stood nearby, quietly watching the two women in his life. In his eyes were gratitude, love, and the faith he once thought lost. As evening fell, Emma sat on the porch and looked up at the sky. Pink clouds drifted slowly. Light sifted through the leaves. She said softly in a low, warm voice, "Justice may sleep, but love will awaken it." Those words closed and opened a chapter. Emma knew not every battle is won by the law. Some things can only be preserved by love and trust. In the gentle light, 3 generations gathered around the dinner table. The clatter of dishes, Sophie's chattering about her day, and laughter filled the house. Each small detail held what they had fought to keep, a true home. Emma told Sophie the old story of the day she and Sophie's father had lost everything. The girl listened intently, then quietly asked, "Grandma, did our family win because you were the best?" Emma shook her head and smiled. "No, dear. We won because we love each other. Love gave us courage." Outside the window, the moon rose, reflecting on the family photo hanging on the wall. 3 faces, 3 smiles, and a spreading sense of peace. The final voiceover came, gentle and precise. "Family is where justice begins. Only when we know how to love do we know how to protect what is right, and to respect and cherish the elderly. Not just a moral duty, but a way to keep our humanity in a world that changes each day." The last imagined camera frame rested on Emma's face. Her eyes turned toward the sky where the sunset faded to pale gold, a small, serene smile. Then the narrator's soft invitation to the audience. If this story makes you believe that love and justice still exist, help keep that flame alive. Subscribe, share, and let the voice of truth continue to spread, because the story of tomorrow might be your story. Music swelled, gentle, warm, and faded into the laughter of children. A door closed softly. A chapter ended, leaving the echo of 3 eternal and straightforward things: love, justice, and family.